Hi, this is Dr. Gordo, and welcome to the Raven and the Writing Desk. Today, we're talking about nouns. Nouns galore. What is a noun? I'm glad you asked. It's a person, place, or thing. And this thing can be matter or non-matter. It'll make more sense when we get into the details. A noun in a sentence or a pronoun will form the subject, so they are important to spot. And just a side note on nouns, if you're not sure, well, is that word acting as a noun or not? One way to test it out is, can you put the definite article the in front of it? If you can say the article, then you've got a noun. So let's go a little more detail. So a few sentences here to illustrate the nouns. The park is beautiful. Park is a noun. Taylor Swift's concert, sell it instantly. A person's name is a noun. We care about the comfort of our patients. So here's an example of something that is in the non-matter category. I mean, we can think of physical ways we can be comfortable, but comfort as a concept is non-matter. The Atlantic Ocean is one of our 5 oceans. So Atlantic Ocean is a noun. Oceans, also noun. And I'm creating this video on an iPad. So as we can see, there's nouns in every complete sentence. Because once again, you need to have a noun or a pronoun for a subject. Diving into the topic, nouns are divided between common and proper nouns. Proper nouns are the formal names for people or places and are spelt with an uppercase letter, or a big letter, if you will, such as countries, Canada, stadiums, Rogers Centre, that's in Toronto, people's name, John Smith. We saw Taylor Swift mentioned earlier on, and Instagram, just the title of anything. That's why I've got the sentence here. Are you going to get an iPhone or a Galaxy? So notice with iPhone, because of its branding, it's purposely spelt with a small I followed by an uppercase P. Again, that's branding, and because of the popularity of the iPhone, we've gotten really used to it, as opposed to an Android phone such as a Galaxy. But we're going to spell it with a capital letter, regardless of where they appear in a sentence. And of course, if you're speaking to somebody, we don't know what letters are capitalized when we're speaking. It's only in the written text that we see it. So, common nouns, all nouns that are not proper. The everyday people, place, and things that we encounter, and they are not capitalized unless, of course, the word begins the sentence. So, I've got an example here. John is tall. He is a fireman. In a few years, he might be the chief. So what I've done here is, well, first of all, John, it's somebody's name. You spell it with a capital letter. Now, he is a fireman. Should fireman be spelled with a capital F because it's the name of a job? Generally speaking, titles are capitalized, such as being the chief of the fire department. That's why I've spelled it with a capital C. And I've left fireman with the lowercase f, because generally speaking, that's what you do. Just types of jobs are common nouns. Actual titles are proper nouns. So once again, when you're speaking, you don't have to worry about any of this. It's only when we're writing things down and we get into capitalization. If you were to spell fireman with an uppercase F, your teacher, whoever's reading it, is probably not going to say anything. And even if you spell chief with a lowercase c, chances are no one's going to say anything unless you want to be really strict with how things are properly done, or if you're an English teacher and you want things to be exact. I do want to do a side note about the personal pronoun I. I is always a capital letter in English. It is never spelt with a lowercase I. And again, we're not talking about words that begin with I, like island. We're talking about the personal pronoun I. I don't fluently speak any other languages, but languages I am familiar with, when you're referring to yourself, the word you use, chances are it is spelt with a lowercase letter if it's the middle of the sentence. I'm thinking of je in French or yo in Spanish. In English, though, it's always a capital I, such as on Monday, I went to the new dog park. And I guess I'm so adamant about this because I've taught in numerous other countries. And when I've been working with students learning English, they tend to put I, the lowercase, in the middle of a sentence. And I got to point it out. I've noticed with my Canadian students in recent years are doing the same thing. Is it because it's not being corrected on text messaging? I'm not really sure. Again, I just want to be adamant. Make sure it is a capital I when you're referring to yourself. Enough said. Singular and plural. If there is more than one person, place, or thing, you need to pluralize it. Very easy in English. You're just going to add the letter S and add a little S to the end of the word. So picture, pictures. Park, parks. Now, what if the word already ends in that S sound, such as glass or tax? We are going to add ES to pluralize it, just so that we can hear that secondary S. Glass, glasses. Tax, taxes. This is getting really technical now. And again, unless you're an English teacher, this isn't really going to interest you, but we have further labels for nouns, such as concrete nouns. A concrete noun is something that we can pick up with one of our five senses. So taste, smell, sight, etc. I dropped my phone in my coffee. The phone, it's something physical, it's something that can be touched. And coffee, obviously something that can be smelled, something that can be seen, and so forth. Abstract is when we're getting into non-matter. Again, getting back to the concept of comfort. You can't look at something and say, that is comfort. It may look comfortable, but that's a little bit different, isn't it? Abstract is something that is an idea. It's a concept. So if I was to say, that kid has grit, I mean, the kid has a lot of guts. The kid has a lot of determination. She doesn't let anything get her down. So in this case, grit is an abstract noun. Then we also have collective nouns, which are a little bit easier to explain when we get into non-count and count nouns. This is probably the trickiest part of this lesson, and that is, quite often in English, we have individuals coming together to form something that is single, something that is collective. For example, if I have numerous students and I want those students to work together, I'll put them in a group. So even though that group is made up of multiple students, we still treat it as singular. The group works well together, as opposed to the group work well together. Group, in this sense, is a collective noun. It is quite similar to the idea of non-count nouns. Let's take a look at those now. So, because we need to know whether the noun is singular or plural, so we can have the correct verb form and all the other subject agreement stuff, what if the object can't reasonably be counted for whatever reason? I put together this sentence. In Canada, we call a coffee with 2 small containers of milk and 2 packets of sugar as a double-double. I had to really think about, what do you call those little packets of milk that they have at the restaurant? You could call it a small container, I've heard juglets, I've heard packets, or just simply creamer, or just simply milk. And when it comes to sugar, when you've got the packets, there's one packet, okay, there's two packets of sugar, that's easy enough to count, but the milk and the sugar itself, sure, you can measure it and put grams on it or milliliters, but that isn't exactly convenient to do when you're having a conversation. So the deal with count and non-count nouns is if the object can be reasonably counted, such as here are 2 pairs of shoes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you got 2 pairs of shoes there. But let's just say I'm having some food and I have some French fries, which can be counted, and I'd like some ketchup for that. Can I please have some ketchup for my French fries? I'm not going to say, can I have X number of milliliters of ketchup, because why? It's just too complicated. It's just so much easier to treat it as a non-count noun. So a non-count noun is an object that we just sort of take as a whole. Going back to the whole example of milk and sugar, if I was at a restaurant and I want some milk, they're probably going to bring out an actual container of milk to put into my coffee. Where if I ask for 2 milks, they're probably going to physically give me the container. I'm also thinking about someone's house and someone says, would you like a water? And I say, sure. I assume they're going to hand me a bottle of water. But if they ask me, would you like some water? They're probably going to pour me a glass. Again, count nouns versus non-count nouns. To help us out with non-count nouns, you've heard me saying the word some. That is known as a determiner. While we're not concerned about the exact amount of water or milk or ketchup or sugar, we do like to add in a little bit of a qualifying word to be a little bit more precise. So let's have some fun. How much fun are we going to have? I don't know. Some. Does anyone here have any ideas? Maybe one person has one idea, maybe someone has 2. Any ideas? And we could say the house is full of happiness. Because I mean, how do you measure happiness? Here you can see the mixing of concrete, abstract, and collective nouns when we come to count and non-count nouns. It is really straightforward. Can it be reasonably counted, yes or no? If the answer is yes, it's a count noun. If the answer is no, it's a non-count noun. And this is important to know because, again, we want to make sure that you've got noun-verb agreement. You want to make sure that you're setting the sentence up for success. There are whole other videos on this. In particular, check out rule number 9 on noun-verb agreement and rule number 1 about forming the possessive. An earlier example about Taylor Swift's concerts, that's an example of a possessive, how a noun can essentially own something else. But again, check out the video on rule number 1. And we'll start to wrap this up. Nouns can be modified by an adjective, but nouns can also modify other nouns in a system called an attribute noun. We've already seen a couple of them. Common noun, proper noun, rice pudding, utility Jeep, dollar store. And you might think, well, isn't that noun just acting as an adjective? Sure. Again, this is that area where if you're an English teacher, you'll be quite keen on making sure that you know your terms, you know how you're explaining it properly. But if you're just someone trying to become a better writer or just learning the language, don't worry too much about this. It's just, nouns are just people, place, and things. Every sentence is going to have one, if not a pronoun, and so just go with that. And just finally, there's something similar called a positive noun, where a noun provides more information for another noun, but I can just wrap that up in another video again. don't worry too much about this. Don't worry too much about it because nouns are easy. To form the plural, you're just adding s or possibly es. Just you're looking at an object and you're giving it a name. Other concepts are also considered as nouns that are not something you can point to, but now I feel I'm in that area where you're trying to explain something that's relatively simple, and in doing so, you're making it more complicated than it needs to be. So this is where your time and effort's going to pay off. Learn the English words for different objects, learn how to spell them, and then the rest will just come naturally because you're going to develop an ear for the language. You're going to learn about what sounds best. So that's going to be all we really need to say about nouns. I mentioned videos from the Elements of Style, rule number 1, in passing there. There's also other videos like adjectives you might want to check out. And in the meantime, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please put it down in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. So thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.